Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin, We the Species. This is a very, very special session with very, very special guests. And I'm kind of really excited about this because it's beyond my comprehension. I'm actually doing this, and I'm with some amazing people. We're going to be talking about from Mississippi Delta to the Jersey Shore, this blues show that's going to be put on and bringing the communities of the Mississippi Delta and the Asbury Park music scene together to Jersey Shore. So I'm with, and we're going to talk about this event. It's coming up on June 2nd at Monmouth University, and we'll talk more about that. But I'm with Christine Clark ZEMLA, and in part her affiliation with, I'm going to say it right, the Jersey Shore Jazz and Blues Foundation. She's also a professor Rutgers University, American Studies, and I'm wearing my Rutgers hat, not because of her, because I was wearing. And I'm with Wayne KESSLER, who is also on the board of the Jersey Shore Jazz and Blues Foundation, and has a band, and I'm getting it right, Jump Around,
Jump Back.
Jump Back. So I want to get that right. And then with Roger STOLLE, who is a music entrepreneur, because your bio there is so long, but he's down in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and has one of the most interesting record stores in America, as I read. So everybody's been putting this together, is involved, and I've said, this was my Johnny Carson monologue, I've said what I have to say, and I think the first thing is to introduce each one of you and say a few words, a little background. Christine, take it away.
Okay. Well, you gave my brief bio, and that was good. Okay. I've been on the board for quite a while, the Jersey Shore Jazz and Blues Foundation, and basically I'm I'm the community outreach person. We're always thinking of ways to reach out into the community, both to provide music, but also ways that in which we can give back. And there are several of us who thought we decided we would think out of the box a little bit. And as Roger knows, I've been going to, and as Wayne knows, I've been going to Mississippi Delta for many years now, for lots of reasons. I love it down there. And just the last few times I was there, I decided that it just makes sense to connect. I mean, you can't not connect the music that's in the Delta and the Jersey Shore, blues and rock and roll. I mean, there's that connection, right? And it just started the last few times I was there. I thought we really need to do something about that. How can we capitalize is not the word that I want to use, but how can we combine those two things in ways that we can share what we know about music history with others, and the beauty of blues music, and frankly the idea that we probably would not have rock and roll the way we have rock and roll today were it not for those innovators, particularly in the Delta. And Roger knows, I mean, he can talk better on this than any of us. The town that he's living in now is just I mean, you're tripping over blues markers. It's one after another, past, present, future. I mean, our guest artist who will be coming up is part of that chain there. But I mean, the people who lived in Clarksdale, who passed through Clarksdale, the things that have happened in Clarksdale, it's amazing. And in a relatively small town, what's the population, Roger? It's
14,000.
Wow.
14,000. It's really, really incredible. The beauty of the town, the music of the town, the beauty of the people. Anyway, it didn't hit me like one day, but it's something that I started thinking about a little while back, and I thought, let's do something with this. Let's share with people these connections, and we know what we have. You know, those of us in New Jersey, we know what we have here. Let's let people know where that music is coming from and what's happening in Clarksdale. And honestly, I think that the more that we can connect, I mean, it's all about connections, right? I think that we will find that it's even more than just the music. I mean, you always find connections when you combine people, when you combine groups, and I think we would find lots of common ground. So anyway, that's, you know, and I started talking to Wayne and to Roger, and we just decided to run with it.
Wonderful, brilliant. It's brilliant. By the way, this is the if people can see it. I'll have that for all people to see, the little poster from the Delta to Jersey Shore. Just brilliant, really. Wayne, Wayne and I found out that if I opened up my window here in my house and I yelled, he might be able to hear me.
Yeah.
Talk about small world.
Small world it is. And yeah, everything's a small world, including our music, which I've learned over the years. I mean, I as I was saying before we kicked this off, I mean, I'm a public relations and marketing professional by trade, mostly because my wife and son like food and a home to live in. But my true love is being a musician. I've been a musician actively on the Jersey Shore for 30 plus years. I've been in and out of the Asbury Park music scene. I've been up and down the Jersey coast. And my band, which is called Jump Back, is an original and cover band. But we started out as more of a traditional or Chicago sort of style blues band, and then realized we were all rock and rollers, and it kind of kept coming out. But I joined the Jersey Shore Jazz and Blues Foundation quite a long time ago, and I joined the board probably about, I think it's coming up on 2 years ago. And it was out of the love of music and wanting to give back and wanting to find a way to continue this historical tradition of jazz and blues. And we have a fairly healthy jazz and blues music scene here in New Jersey. People don't necessarily think of blues when they think of New Jersey. They think of Springsteen, they think of Bon Jovi. But that other guy, Southside Johnny, was really a Chicago blues fanatic.
Wow.
Now, well, that's not the Delta, but you know, those folks came up from the Delta to Chicago and electrified it, and Southside Johnny was moved by that, and he was the local harp player for a long time. So we do put on a lot of blues, and as a foundation, we've been carrying on that tradition on an annual basis. We have an annual festival in the summer, and we do carry through lots of other live music events. And we do an adaptation of the blues. We run an international blues competition through the foundation each year, where we send winners to Memphis, Tennessee, to compete in the International Blues Challenge, which is truly international. As a matter of fact, and we're pretty proud of this, this year we sent a band and we sent an individual who competed in the solo duo category, this gentleman, Jonathan Kalb, who made it to the actual finals of the International Blues Challenge. Yeah, he didn't win, but he made it to, through the entire process to the actual finals. He's a traditional acoustic guitar, harp blowing, storytelling guy. And so, we have our adaptations, but, we're really getting excited about sort of merging the two musical histories together. And Asbury Park, probably in some senses, is very similar to Clarksdale, Mississippi. It's had its heyday, it's had its depreciation, it's had its sort of second coming, if you will, and is now a vibrant art and music town again. But we're really looking forward to bringing really the root of it all, Clarksdale up to New Jersey next week.
Great. Roger.
Yes, so I'm Roger STOLLE. I'm sitting in Clarksdale, Mississippi right now, downtown. And as Christine mentioned, the history here is just ridiculous. It's blues history on top of blues history. But I'm not from here originally. I've lived here now 21 years and been involved with the blues scene. My Cathead Delta Blues and folk art store, but then all kinds of other stuff, festivals and documentaries and books and things, projects like this. But I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and got into blues through the back door, of rock and roll. First Elvis, actually. I was 10 years old when he died, and some of his music really appealed to me, which I did not know was, basically blues and R&B covers, but found that out later. And then guys like, Eric Clapton and, Keith Richards and, later Stevie Ray Vaughan, they would mention names.
Yeah.
And so I would find, I'd go out, and I probably as a kid was too cheap to buy the magazines, but I would go to like bookstores and look at the interviews and make notes when they name dropped and be like, oh, I got to check that out. As I always say to young people today, this is way before Google. So, we just have to do all this manual research. And, being a kid growing up in Ohio, you had not a whole lot of access to blues recordings. So you kind of bought what you could buy. But I sort of, educated myself, self-educated, and saw every act I could, where we have the world famous Crossroads marker, sort of representing Robert Johnson's deal with the devil to play blues here in Clarksdale at Highway 621 and 49. Where I grew up, there was I-70 and I-75 that crossed. And the great thing about that crossroads is it brought through acts, usually during the week, who were headed somewhere else for a bigger festival gig. And you get these pickup dates at, there was a place called Jilly's, a little jazz club that would occasionally book touring blues stuff. So back in the 1980s, I saw R.L. Burnside and Buddy Guy and guys like that, that really just further, got me into the blues, I guess. But I actually was in advertising before all this. That's what I stumbled into after college as a copywriter, worked my way up, got promoted and all that, and got recruited for a job in St. Louis in February 1995. So I'm a blues fan. I moved to St. Louis. It is a blues town. Back then in 1995, it was really a blues town because you had several older musicians from Mississippi who, as part of the Great Migration northward, didn't make it to Chicago. They stopped in St. Louis. Big George Brock and Arthur Williams and Henry Townsend, really a whole laundry list at the time who I could see. The other thing that happened when I relocated to St. Louis is I finally really looked at a map and really looked at, oh, yeah, you're 5 hours, you're in Mississippi. So I came down to do, and these are air quotes, the Dead Man Blues Tour, because I assumed it was all gone. I thought I would just come down and see where my heroes came from, try to look for birthplaces, headstones, that kind of thing. There was a very tiny, really only one real blues museum in the world at that time, a very tiny Delta Blues Museum. In the upstairs, the children's section, actually upstairs of the library, that's one block over. Now it's a world famous, big full-size museum in the old freight train depot downtown. But, I started coming here because of the history. And, today you come forward 21 years of me being here, plus the 6 or so that I visited from St. Louis. And I will get tourists who will say to me, oh, you must love the blues to have moved here. And I do. But what I usually tell them is, the blues brought me here, but the people made me want to stay. They're just amazing people here. And I don't really even like people, as a rule. So that says a lot. But the people here are unbelievable. I mean, the characters, you could write those characters into a novel and you'd be like, yeah, that could never happen. But, I can run into them on the street.
Of them are in novels, Roger, but we can talk about that later.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, you tell somebody an actual story that you personally witnessed, and it's like a novel. Just the characters, and sort of the sincerity of people. I mean, in the music scene, now, I'll be honest, there's a lot of, kind of hustlers in the blues scene and whatever. You got guys like Red Payton, who owns a Juke joint here, world famous Juke joint. And he'll definitely hustle you if you can, but in his heart, he loves the music and he loves the musician and he loves the people who come from all around the world. He will never tell you that, but he does, to the point that he would take hits to his own pocketbook to have music to get those people on nights when they didn't actually show up. So long story short, I guess, I moved here and let's see, May of 2002, opened Cathead Delta Blues and Folk Art. Not because I wanted to own a retail store, but because I needed a base of operations and something to theoretically bring money through the door. But the concept, the reason I moved here, the mission was to organize and promote the blues from within. In other words, all the puzzle pieces were here. But 21 years ago, you did not have live blues 365 nights a year. You did not have it 5 days a week. You had it on the weekends, but not every weekend. There was a really awesome lady, Miss Sarah Moore, who was trying to run a little juke joint soul food kitchen on Thursday nights, but that was really an iffy proposition for tourists who were coming through to try to convince them, well, something might happen tonight, get a hotel room. And back then, the hotel rooms were as dire as you can imagine because, the town was on its way out, truthfully. And so the theory was if we could be the town with the live blues, I wasn't really realistically thinking it'd be 365, but many nights of the week, let's say, reliably, we could be that town between Memphis and New Orleans. We could get that overnight stay. We were getting a 1 or 2 hour visitor because they would come through and want to see the history, but then they hit the road and keep moving. And if we could snag them for a night, well, then they would have an amazing time. It would help us to have more live music. The more live music we have, well, the more entrepreneurs who are like, oh, we should build some hotel rooms, or we should open a restaurant, that kind of thing, plus retail. And you come forward 21 years and blues, it really has saved the downtown. There's just no two ways about it. You have all these businesses that are directly related that you're like, oh yeah, that's a guitar store, or that's a museum, or that's a blues gift shop, or whatever, or a club. And you're like, oh, that's directly related. But what a lot of folks don't credit the blues for, I think, unless they really kind of dig into it, is having these restaurants that serve locals and, tourists, having these other not necessarily blues related gift shops and stores that serve both communities. And really it's the music, it's the tourists being added to the locals as far as a customer base that has allowed a lot of those businesses to, be created and exist. 21 years in, we are 365 nights a year live blues. We also had 13 festivals in town last year. And I think that's probably the number we have this year as well. We've already had, we had the Clarksdale Film and Music Festival in January. We had Juke Joint Festival, which we started 20 years ago, and that is the biggest. We had that in April. And I know we had at least like 47 US states and either 14 or 17 foreign countries here that we could document. Wow. And a majority of Mississippi counties. Wow. But we've gone into the 24 and above with countries before. We're still bouncing back kind of from the pandemic, getting international like we had it. But then we had, Little Clarksdale Caravan Music Fest at the beginning of May. We had the Women in Blues Festival this past weekend. This weekend, we have the anniversary of Ground Zero Blues Club, co-owned by Morgan Freeman, the actor. So they're doing a whole bunch of extra music.
Wow.
And then we also have Goat Fest, which is a dude out of Texas who basically started putting on his own festival here in Clarksdale because A, he loved Clarksdale, and B, like all of us, he has a birthday once a year. So it's basically getting people to pay for a ticket to pay for his birthday music, essentially. But it's a combination. In his case, it's a combination of like blues and rock type music. So
wow.
I'm not even sure if that was the answer to the question, but
you answered it.
Roger, I gotta ask you before I forget. Deke Harp, is he in Clarksdale?
Yes, he's playing tonight at Bluesberry Cafe. If you can get here by 7.
He's from up here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
He's from here. So there's another connection. I didn't want to forget that.
And actually, with the drummer we're bringing with Big A, Quicksand, Ricky Martin is his real name. He was born in Buffalo, New York. So, I realize not right there, but of course, he's lived in Arkansas forever now.
Yeah, I think Deke owns a harmonica store down in Clarksdale.
He does. It's right around the corner from my store. It's super cool. And his most famous customer was Ozzy Osbourne, but he does not have a bathroom there. So Ozzy used the bathroom at Cathead. I don't know if it's plus or not, but it's true.
It's a story.
Yes.
Just to reemphasize for folks listening in here that you have live music in Clarksdale 365 days a year. Astounding.
It's crazy. I mean, I admit it's crazy at this point because you go to other towns and sometimes it's hard to find any blues or any music, frankly. And in the Delta, this is not a normal thing. I don't know where they're from, some tourists from overseas today in store, and they were doing kind of the Mississippi Blues Trail, which I'll just tell people briefly, msbluestrail.org, or you can download the free app. The Mississippi Blues Trail is an actual trail of markers, big metal markers with photos and stuff on the back. Very cool. There's over 200 of them. So we'll get folks who come through, and it's a great thing to do during the day, kind of check out the history of all our little towns around here with these markers. Now, obviously, Clarksdale and Coahoma County has more than any other county just because we're Clarksdale. But these folks wanted to know, well, if we're down in Vicksburg tonight, would there be live blues? And I love Vicksburg, but there's not. There actually is a Monday nights in Jackson, Mississippi, which is what I told them. But Clarksdale, we have purposely gone after it. And we know that certain nights of the week, you're just not going to get locals coming out for entertainment, but tourists travel, 365 in some regard. And particularly, people travel when they can. So even like holidays, I know the frustrating thing for me as a tourist when I used to visit here, any holiday, I'm telling you, patriotic holidays, whatever, if there was an excuse to close, businesses would all close and there'd be no music. And my thing is, well, hey, people travel when they can. If you tack on a Monday to a weekend because it's Memorial Day weekend, well, I might come to your town if you've got entertainment, So we've tried to look at it that way. Nights like Christmas night, I still have to hand carry that to make music happen. But it's a matter of a few phone calls and you can get somebody to do it. You might have 9 tourists, but they're the happiest 9 tourists,
Wow.
this side of North Pole, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wayne, could you just do a quick overview of the Jersey Shore music scene?
Wow.
Quick, whatever. I know that's
yeah, I could tell. Well, I'll try and piggyback a little bit about where off Roger was saying. In a very different way, we have a very healthy music scene, which really, I mean, depending on where you look, I mean, Frank Sinatra came out of Hoboken, from that angle. Asbury Park and the Middletown area brought out Bruce Springsteen, Southside Johnny, John Bon Jovi, the Smithereens was another one in the 80s. So we've always had a healthy dose of music, and there is, they call it the Jersey Sound, which came out of Asbury Park, probably more particular than anywhere else, but it sort of merged rock, blues, R&B, and soul, and put it all together and created this sound that's unique it's unique to itself. And that in itself has a very rich history. But there's also a very healthy following of blues. Why that is, I'm not 100% sure, but it's got to be the love of music and the roots. If it's anyone like me, and Roger kind of alluded to it, I was a Keith Richards guy, and I would read these things called liner notes on the back of records or inside the fold, and they would talk about people like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Jimmy Reed, on and on and on, and now I'd have to go to the record store and try and find them, and I'm sure others like me did that and found more of the roots. We have a sort of a hodgepodge of blues here. I would kind of say it would probably lean more on the Chicago electric sound, more particularly, but then we have a lot of, more Southern roots, Delta style blues artists here. And I said Delta style because it's some adaptation or appreciation. One gentleman that'll be participating on June 2nd, String Bean, is a appreciator and lover of the blues, and has been a performing blues musician in Asbury Park and the Jersey Shore for many years. Mm-hmm. But it really probably goes from there. But we have our own wealth of history. Asbury Park in particular, probably the most is thought after, the Stone Pony being a world-renowned and destination for tourists looking for Bruce more than anyone else. But you know what? Sometimes you can find Bruce. He's hanging around amongst folks, usually wearing a baseball hat, but he's out there. And it's its own vibe and it's its own feel. And it still has it today. And that's probably the synergies with Clarksdale, is that there's this feel, there's this vibe there. And Asbury Park probably has music close to 365 nights a year. It may not be 365, but it's probably pretty darn close. Sandy Mack, who's another, he's been a big supporter of the Jersey Shore Jazz and Blues Foundation. He is a stellar blues harp player and a big fan of the blues. And
you do harmonica?
Yep. He is a great harmonica player, and he runs events several nights a week in Asbury Park and elsewhere. And he's done events with us. We do a Harp and Help annual event where we raise funds and feature harmonica players. So there's always been that flavor of blues here in New Jersey, of all places, but it's here.
And you know what, Wayne, if I could add, even
Yeah,
before
please.
that, we had some of the big band sound. I mean, we have the Count Basie
Yeah,
Theater
you have Count Basie.
in Red Bank and Springwood Avenue in Asbury before all those clubs burned. That was part of the Chitlin circuit. The performers coming maybe from New York City, passing through, would play those Springwood Avenue clubs. And now they're mostly not there anymore. There's one, I think, that they're trying to make into a viable club now, but that was a really vibrant jazz scene many years ago, before
Absolutely.
we were around to go to clubs. But yeah, so yeah, there's history there.
Well, speaking of jazz, and I want to say like Inglewood Cliffs, is that right? In New
Yeah.
Jersey?
By New
Yeah,
York.
sure.
There's the Rudy Van Gelder studio there, where not only John Coltrane recorded like A Love Supreme, but Wade Walton, a blues singing barber who I once tried to get a haircut from here in Clarksdale. That's a whole story. But he recorded his album in 1960 for Bluesway at that studio. He told me he recorded it in New York, but they did a reissue last year. And I'm like, what the? It was Van Gelder's studio. So it's a small world. There are connections.
It really is a small world.
Yeah.
Christine, quickly, the mission, how old is Jersey Shore Jazz, and how old, and the mission statement, and the other question, if you could just reiterate, you go down to the Delta every summer, which I think is extraordinary, and there are other motivations. If you can just kind of talk about that.
Our organization is we think it's about 35 years old. But I think Eileen Chapman, who's actually the director of the Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music, and Bob Santelli, who's the executive director, they were the founders of the Jersey Shore Jazz and Blues Foundation. So now they have the Bruce Springsteen Archives, but as part of that archives, they will be housing some of our archival material, which dates only back 35 years, but they were the founders. Yeah, so I'm probably going to, I think we're actually in the middle of changing the wording just a little bit, but we're basically, we look to preserve and promote jazz and blues music. And we are, as part of our efforts, we are boosting, I would say, I don't know if this is the way we want to put it, we're looking for ways that we can not only perform, like Wayne said, we have music here a lot. There are a lot of venues, there are a lot of performers. We try to do things a little bit different when we can. We have a long history of going into schools and doing school programs, sometimes bringing outside artists and doing maybe not a residency so much, but doing some programming in schools. I actually did a year or so ago, I did a preschool program. I mean, just to kind of, and I have to say, it was one of my, I don't know, it was just one of those moments where you say, this was a good thing, because it was like a 30-minute program. I played music for the kids. They're 3 and 4 years old. Does the music make you happy or sad? They held up happy and sad faces, just to get them thinking about how we can connect to music, and then had them jumping and running and everything. And as I was leaving, I said, thanks for having me. And the little girl came up to me and she said, we'll see you when you come back tomorrow, right? And I said, no, I'm not coming back. It was so cute. And it's things like that, like, I mean, it was just a great experience, and I'll do that again. The Delta, I know, Cal, you and I have talked about this a little bit. It really was the history, even before the music. Cal has heard this story. My husband and I were traveling one year. My husband said he said, let's go to New Orleans. Okay, fine. Neither of us had been to New Orleans. Sounded like a great trip. I said, I'll go to New Orleans with you if you'll go to the Delta with me. And he kind of looked at me and said, what? What do we? I said, we're going to go to the Mississippi Delta. He said, okay, fine. And we've been back to New Orleans once more, which is great. It's a great city, but we go to the Delta every year, multiple times, sometimes a year. I think the only time I've missed in years and years was during COVID. And then we went even at the tail end of COVID. When all those restaurants, Roger, you remember, weren't all open, but that was okay. We were there. Yeah. So it's something, and I know, I don't know. I mean, I've probably told you this story, Cal, that Ben Hedin, Holly, the author, movie producer, director, he's the one who did that Two Trains Running film.
Right.
He came to the Asbury Park Film Festival, and I talked to him. Roger, you would appreciate this. The opening segment of I don't know if you've seen that film or not, but the opening scenes, it's like I'm looking and I go, wait, I was there. I had just come back from Mississippi like the week before, and wait, Bentonia, I was there. I mean, all of those scenes were so familiar. I had just driven down those roads a week before. And so I went up to Ben afterwards, who's from, I believe, Minnesota, I'm not sure. And I said, well, what is it about Mississippi for you? Like, why do you keep going back? And we looked at each other, and he said, you either get it or you don't. And I said, I think I know what you mean. Like, cause I got it that first time. But I think part of it is about the history of the place, just thinking about how people lived their lives 100, 150 years ago. Like, and I think, what is it about that area? And there are other areas too, but the Delta especially is so rich in so many things. But what made that area like that? And I don't know that there's any one answer, but I do think if we're looking at the Mississippi Delta, there were a lot of struggles there, as well as many other places. And I know I've said this to people before, and it's one of those things I can't really explain it, but sometimes it's this idea that out of struggle comes beauty. Sometimes you don't want people to struggle. You don't want people to be poor. You don't want people to suffer, but there's something sometimes that out of that comes beauty. I think we would all we want to take the struggles away, but given that we can't do that, and given that people did struggle, hard times sometimes just produces something almost magical. And I feel like that's part of the Delta. It really was the history that brought me there, and the music. I'm not going to deny the music, because my husband and I have gone back and forth. He said, well, it was blues music, and I said, no, it was just, I just wanted to go to that place. But yeah, the music that keeps me coming back. I've told the story about going to Reds for the first time. Roger, you'll appreciate this. I was with my friend. The two of us were there together, and I said, Lisa, I know it's here somewhere. I know it's right here. We went around the block. Now, if you don't know it's Reds, you don't know it's Reds, because you're just going to keep driving by. It was Jack Johnson's CD release party. You were there. I said, I think this is it. We got out of the car. We're looking around like, is this right? It was quiet outside. Open the door. It was like a movie, like the noise and the dancing and the partying going on inside. It was just incredible. And, I've been back to Reds many, many times since. And sometimes Reds will be 8 or 10, 12 people in there. And then sometimes there'll be 35 people in there. But it's always great. Doesn't matter. It's always great. You never have a bad time. It's always entertaining. It's entertaining at Reds. I just keep going back, and and just drive up and down the highways and the dirt roads and the back roads, and it's just I'll just keep going back.
Christine sent me this novice here today. She sent me a couple of links to Anthony Big A Sherrod, who will be coming to perform from the Delta to the Jersey Shore on June 2nd at Monmouth University. That's why we're here. And I listened, and I went like this. And sometimes it's like I want to perform what Cher did to Nicolas Cage in the movie Moonstruck, when she slaps him and tells him to snap out of it. I almost wanted to slap myself to snap out of it, that here I am at this septuagenarian stage, and I never heard this. And it was beyond. He was beyond, and his band is beyond. So, Roger, a couple of words. I mean, what a treasure what a treasure.
Yeah, so Anthony Big A Sherrod, and I've lost track of what year he's born, about 39 years old.
I know
Uh,
exactly when he was born because he and my youngest son were born on the same day.
Oh, wow.
They have the same birthday. Yeah. Yeah.
So, he's young when you're talking about like, traditional blues, I suppose, where that sounds young. But he started playing, technically speaking, when he was 2 years old. And that's a whole story he'll probably tell. But then a few years later, he started getting lessons from a guy named Mr. Johnny Billington, a guy who gave basic guitar, bass, and drum lessons, and then had a band, would use the kids in the band, essentially. And the thing about Anthony is he was so good. He was a prodigy, but also, he took to it. So I'm sure he practiced. I'm sure, they rehearsed in the way that they rehearsed. And he's always been amazing on drums, bass, and guitar. And of course, guitar is his main instrument. But he's the torchbearer for the Clarksdale sound because he was so good. Even as a little kid, everybody hired him. Big Jack Johnson, Wesley Junebug Jefferson, Bilbo Walker, Dr. Michael James, who was not a doctor, by the way. All these characters, these blues characters would hire him, and all kinds of names I'm not even thinking of right now. And, they used to say about Robert Johnson that if he heard a song, he had it. Like he'd play that song later that night, some song he heard during the day. Anthony is like that. And in his case, he played the songs, backing these guys up, for, through the years. And all those guys are gone now. But he has those songs. Now, he does not work with a set list. So musicians who come to the show, look at the floor. You're not going to see a set list. It's in his head. And there's no order in his head. It's just all the stuff's in his head. And he's going to, based on how he feels at that moment, how the band is reacting, what the audience seems to be about, he's going to choose what songs he does and how he performs on stage, if he comes off the stage into the audience, those kind of things. Because that's the juke joint style. These juke joints aren't like organized blues clubs with 45-minute sets and a 20-minute break and, a set list and these kind of things. It's just not like that. It's a house party where the owner doesn't really want you at his house. So he has this other place. And, that's the juke joint. And that's how Anthony came up. And I've seen him a bazillion times. I always look forward to seeing him. It is always going to be fresh and new. Sometimes he'll do the craziest things where he'll start a song. You're like, oh, I know what song this is going to be. And then he'll sing a different song's lyrics right over that song. And I didn't even know if he knows he's doing that sometimes. I'm never really sure. But I took him to, right before the pandemic, I took him to Israel. We had a fan who was coming for all our juke joint festivals, and she wanted to book him over there. And we had 3 shows, 3 days, I think, right in a row. One was a big outdoor public performance. It was free. There were families, that kind of thing. So there's that show. The next night was this kind of hoity-toity dinner club kind of thing in a fancy hotel. The following night, the third night, it was a rock club in a basement in Tel Aviv. He repeated one song, 6 hours of music, repeats one song because he customized what was coming out of him for what he was seeing come back at him with the audience. And he didn't even know. I told him after the last show that next morning, and I said, you only repeated, I don't remember what song it was, but it was the one song. He's like, oh, he had no clue. He is in the moment. And I've had customers who come through my cat head store who describe him in different ways, but a lady described him perfectly when she had seen him at Red's the night before. And she said, it's like the music is just flowing through him. He's not thinking about that music. He's not thinking about what note or what, lick to do or what song to do. It's just flowing through him. And it probably would ruin it if you told him, no, you got to think about these things. I don't know. But he really is incredible. And I encourage folks who see this, hear this, if you don't think you like blues, well, you're going to like blues after you see him. He's just an amazing guy. He's an amazing performer. The music, at the end of, there's a great blues book called Deep Blues. Robert Palmer, the music critic, not the pop singer, wrote. And at the end, there's a quote where he says something like, it's a rhetorical question. How much history can be transmitted by pressure on a guitar string? And that's what you're getting with Anthony. You're seeing history. You're hearing history. You're absorbing it, and you don't even know it, really. Then when you come visit Clarksdale, as anybody watching this or who comes to the show should do at some point, you go to Red's Lounge, you catch them on a Friday, Saturday night, and you'll see all these pictures behind the band performing on the wall, these these guys who are largely gone now. And you know, he'll kind of observe somebody, and then he'll kind of launch into one of their songs, sort of like a tribute. I mean, he remembers, you know, he was there and he remembers. It's not like, you know, people who say, well, I was on, you know, I played with blah, 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 you know, well, it was one time, one song you sat in, you know, he really was there in the trenches playing those long nights past curfew, you know, when he shouldn't have been out as a kid, and really absorbed it all.
Mhm.
Wow.
If I could just add real quickly, I don't know that I've seen anybody who connects with the audience quite like Anthony. I mean, what you're saying is like the music just comes somewhere from within him, and he just reaches out to I mean, it's not like he's up there, like you said, thinking about what he's doing. I have to do this, I have to do that. He just does it, and you just feel it. You just, the audience feels it. It's really, he's really something special. He really
This is a huge special treat that's coming up.
Mhm.
We're gonna wind down now because actually I could sit here all night and fill my head and listen to you all, because it's a new world for me, and I'm so fascinated, and again, listening to Anthony, it's like a wow. Quickly, last item, tickets. I know they're kind of almost sold out.
Almost. What did we have, Wayne? Last count, I think it was maybe 34 were left.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like-
Don't wait on them.
No.
They're not going to be there forever. That's for sure.
No,
Okay,
no.
so
So
tickets.
on that poster is the, or somewhere, or all of our Facebook messages and everything.
Have the link.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
I'll put the link on
Yeah.
so we did good.
Mhm.
We did good. I'm borrowing this line from The Godfather. You did
Yeah.
good. We did good. And
Yeah.
to Roger and Wayne and Christine, thank you so much for this, for giving me the opportunity to explore and to share. Huge thanks. And again, come back anytime, because I'm here. We're gonna sign off now. I'll have all the information for everybody to see where they can get tickets. There's not a lot of time. I'll tell people there's not a lot of time when I do my promos. But thank you all for this. Has been truly wonderful.
And thank you, Cal.
Thank you, Cal. Yeah.
Can I add one quick
Pleasure.
note?
Please.
So for those who are interested, one of the sponsors helping out is Visit Clarksdale Tourism, which is here in Clarksdale. But if you ever do want to look at coming to Clarksdale, Mississippi, if you go to their website, visitclarksdale.com, it is super helpful. Visit Clarksdale.com.
Okay.
Also, should you want to see our weekly, monthly, yearly festival and music calendar, you can go to my store website, which is cathead.biz, and click on the music calendar.
By the way, I'm gonna have all your links. I'm very efficient. It's a product of I'm very efficient. I'm gonna have all these links in my promo pieces. I'll have 2 or 3 sentences. I mean, you've all got long bios, but I'll have all these links. Visit clarksdale.com, the store. Jump back. Christine, your stuff. I even have a link from one of the NewJersey.com articles
Oh, cool.
that they wrote about you and Emmett Till. So yeah, so I'm pretty resourceful for an old timer. So I'll have all those links in it. Anyway, we're gonna stop recording now. Don't leave. I'll just do a 2-minute wrap.
Great.
So again, thank you. Don't leave. I'm stopping recording.